My Lord, the Psalter reads, do you remain so distant, so silent in times of trouble? Why should the wicked be allowed to scoff at God, saying to themselves that you will not notice? Break the might of the wicked. Search out their hidden evil. Aron HaTorah, Aron HaEmunah, Omed Bodei Shakul. The ark of scripture, of faith, of learning, stands empty and bereft. We have come here to remember those who cannot be forgotten. We have come to speak of that which cannot be spoken. We must, but must not be left unsaid. We have come to remind not others but ourselves of what was done and what was not done. We have come to ask questions that cannot be answered, but cannot be left unasked. We know how to remember the dead we have known. We know how to commemorate the death of one person. But all of us are mourners. All of us recall not one but millions, not alone those we have known, but those no one can know, the names that are forever lost. As we gather here to commemorate and remember the most painful moments of history, we also appreciate the blessings that we have been bestowed on us. The blessings of gathering together here in Ridgewood for this 30th time together, different communities, different faiths coming together as one. We are thankful for the blessing of our speaker, Dr. Inga Auerbacher, who we will hear from shortly. We are grateful for the gifts of our musicians, the gifts of Mac Brandon and Tamara Freeman and all the others who will add sound to our prayers. We give gratitude for the gifts that are bestowed upon us. I'm grateful for the gifts of my colleagues, the clergy. Grateful for those who've come to light candles, to tribute to their experience and the experiences of their family. I'm grateful for the gift of all of us to be here together as one. My prayer, I don't know to whom to offer it, but I offer it. My prayer, I have no one to whom to say it, but I say it. My prayer, it freezes to my palate, but I still have it. My prayer, it wells up in a fit of rage, I must speak it. My prayer, it falters again and again, yet I persist. My prayer rises over millions of graves, yet I say it. My prayer fails, vanished without words, yet I offer it. My prayer is to the one who may not even hear, still I say it. Thank you for joining me in prayer. Welcome to Temple Israel. You may be seated as I call upon the Honorable Paul Aronson, Mayor of the Village of Ridgewood.
Good evening.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Village Council, I have this following proclamation. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored, systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945, 6 million were murdered. Roma, people with disabilities, and Poles were also targeted for destruction or decimation for racial, ethnic, or national reasons. And millions more, including homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet prisoners of war, and political dissidents, all suffered grievous oppression and death under Nazi tyranny. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments, and whereas we, the residents of the village of Ridgewood, should always remember the terrible events of the Holocaust and remain vigilant against hatred, persecution, and tyranny. And whereas we, the residents of the village of Ridgewood, should actively rededicate ourselves to the principles of individual freedom in a just society. And whereas the days of remembrance have been set aside for the residents of the village of Ridgewood to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect for all people. Whereas pursuant to an act of Congress, the United States Holocaust Memorial Council designates the days of remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust, including the days of remembrance known as Yom HaShoah. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood does hereby proclaim May 1st through May 5th, 2016 as days of remembrance in the Village of Ridgewood, in memory of the victims of the Holocaust and in honor of the survivors as well as the rescuers and liberators, and urges and encourages all residents of the Village of Ridgewood to work to promote human dignity and confront hatred whenever and wherever it occurs. Thank you.
Stories and commemorations of the Holocaust usually begin with the rise of the Third Reich in Germany, leading to the institution of the policy of European Jewish extermination. That is a story of dehumanization and industrialized massacre on a huge scale. It is a story of numbers, as we just heard. The 6 million Jews, the 1.5 million Jewish children, the 5 million non-Jews, including Poles, Slavs, Serbs, Czechs, Gypsies, Greeks, Italians, Russians, Spaniards, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, and physically and mentally handicapped people. How can we grieve for a number? We need a human face on those numbers. We need a way to imagine the living, vibrant Jewish world of Europe that is no more.
Good evening, everyone, and peace be with you. We remember things so difficult to contemplate. Death, mass murder, the combined tears of millions of our brothers and sisters, young and old alike. The boundless cruelty within the human heart. What is life like when human beings are denied all respect and dignity, when a tyrant believes that in his hands are the life and death of a people who are subhuman in his eyes? We remember things so difficult to contemplate.
Passage from Night by Elie Wiesel. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp, which has turned my life into one long night, 7 times cursed and 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the little faces of the children whose bodies I saw turn to wreaths of smoke beneath a silent blue sky. Never shall I forget those flames which consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence which deprived me of all eternity the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments which murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams into dust. Never shall I forget these things. Even if I am condemned to live as long as God himself, never.
The Reverend Martin Niemöller, a pastor in the German Confessing Church, spent 7 years in the concentration camp, and he wrote the following words. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me.
Who spoke for the 1.5 million children who perished in the Holocaust? This evening, our keynote speaker, Dr. Inga Auerbacher, will help us remember the youngest victims of the Third Reich. Dr. Auerbacher will reflect on her childhood imprisonment in the Terezin concentration camp, where music was staged to fool the International Red Cross into believing concentration camp inmates were being treated humanely. During Dr. Auerbacher's internment, the children's operetta Wunderbar, composed by Hans Krause, was staged 55 times. In honor of the 1.5 million children, let us now listen to the serenade from Wunderbar, played by Ridgewood High School freshman and pianist, and a lovely young lady, Grace Boo.
If you look at the front of the order of service this evening, you see that this is the 30th annual Interfaith Holocaust Remembrance service. When I started coming to these around 1993, we had very many survivors who came and spoke of their personal experience. In the 20-something years since then, the number of survivors has diminished. And we have heard from children and grandchildren and from occasional survivors, but it has been rare for us to hear firsthand. If you look on the back of the program, you will see Never Forget. We are blessed this evening with a firsthand account, a survivor who comes as an ambassador from that dark time to bring us the message, a message which on many ways we don't want to hear, but we must, a message of what it was like to be a child, to be 3 years old at Kristallnacht, a time when many of us, I suspect, were forming our first memories, our first sense of what life was like. And Dr. Auerbacher was 3 when Kristallnacht happened, and that was perhaps in some ways her introduction to the world in which she would live out the next 10 years or so of her life. She spent 3 years in a prison camp with her parents, and against all of the odds survived, and then they came to America when she was just 12 years old, when she was what we would say, a middle school student, and what she had seen and what she had gone through at the age when she should have had nothing of that sort in her background. She comes to tell us that story, to share with us so that we may never forget. A time will come when we will not be able to hear from people who are survivors, from people for whom this is their personal experience. So tonight, take to heart what Dr. Auerbacher says, so that you may inherit and pass on this holy message that we must never forget. There is something not quite right about a Christian inviting a Jew to speak in a synagogue. So I am not going to pretend to welcome her here, but to beseech her, to ask her to come forward and be our teacher, be the one who speaks to us, so that we may join that company of people who never forget, that people who take to heart, as difficult as it is, the words which tell of this experience, so that we may go forth from here, as it were, charged with the responsibility, part of that community of people who gather together so that we may be ambassadors not of darkness, but of a hope and a conviction and an absolute dedication that this may never darken the face of the world again. Dr. Auerbacher, please come forward and help us so that we may be among those who never forget.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
It is really quite special tonight, and especially the inclement weather. These raindrops are tears for our loved ones who died during the Holocaust and all other genocides. I want to thank you all for your invitation to speak tonight. Thank you, all clergy, choirs, other artists, the Ridgewood Interfaith Council, and distinguished guests, and mayor as well. special thanks go to Dr. Tamara Freeman, who put music to my poem of faith, God Spark. And it came in a very different way. Tamara called me up one day. She wanted to have a poem that from one of my books, and could she use it for a special thing that she was writing in the book? I said, of course. And then she said she's in music, and I said right away, can you write music? I have a poem, I have another poem, I would love you to set the music. And the product was God Spark, which you will hear for the first time tonight, a song of faith for all people. I want to thank especially also to Reverend Mack and his great talent for bringing voice to the song. Thank you so much. I live in a row house in the borough of Queens in New York City. Queens is the most ethnically diverse place in the country. I live between a devout Hindu and Muslim family. Our walls touch each other. Then comes a Christian family next to them. People of four faiths living in harmony together. Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian. My hope and my prayer is for all faiths to live in harmony together one day. I know that day must come, and it must come very, very soon. We are all children of God. As for me, I was born on December 31, 1934. Yes, I'm 81 years young. Remember, it's young, not old. I don't listen. In a little village called Kippenheim in southwestern Germany, very close to France and Switzerland, a village of about 2,000 people, 60 Jewish families. The town is about 1,000 years old. Jewish people have lived there for at least 200 years. And I was the last Jewish child born there. There was no hospital. I was born at home, and we always think all doctors are Jewish. Well, the one who delivered me happened to be a German, not a Jewish doctor. Not only that, he already belonged to the Nazi party. He came to my mother's bedside many times. She was sick for 9 months with me, gave her plenty of trouble, and he delivered me. And later on, he did some terrible things, and in the euthanasia program, most likely, killing people with mental and physical difficulties. And he was in jail for many, many years. And I wonder, is there Jekyll and Hyde in all of us? He treated the Jewish people still with respect. We were a happy community, lived side by side. We fought in the wars. My father fought in World War I, was wounded very badly, and received the Iron Cross. We were patriotic Germans. We loved our country. Jewish people lived in Germany for more than 1,000 years. We never were more than about 500,000 in population in all of Germany. And the first time that I ever felt anything different was Kristallnacht, which was talked to just before. It was just before my 4th birthday, November 10th in my hometown. November 9th and 10th was a major riot in both Austria and in Germany. I remember my grandparents came to see us. We were modern Orthodox. My grandpa went to the synagogue in the morning to say his morning prayers. He was arrested from his prayers and sent to the Dachau concentration camp. The police came to our house and arrested my father just because we were Jewish. All the windows in our houses were broken. I remember standing in the living room with my mother and grandmother, glass all over the floor. And the hood looked through the broken window. And he said, oh, the chandelier is still hanging. And he threw a big rock through the broken window, which almost hit me. My mother just pulled me away. And all of the stores were broken into. The synagogue they wanted to burn it, but there were Christian houses nearby. But they disrupted it and they made a tremendous damage in the synagogue, which later on, the synagogue was just about half in size. Today it has been rebuilt, and it stands right in the middle of the village, two of the most beautiful